International tensions are reaching a new critical point, and Prime Minister Starmer has now been forced to act without delay. Just hours after returning from the G7 summit, he has urgently called for a meeting of the COBRA Emergency Committee. This is no coincidence. It is a direct response to rapidly unfolding developments beyond our borders. The UK is beginning to take decisive steps in what appears to be a crisis of growing proportions. Diplomatic personnel are being evacuated, alerts are multiplying, and the conflict has escalated into an issue of international concern. The key question is, what has triggered this sudden shift, and why is the British government preparing for something much larger in scale? Let's break it down. But first, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has ordered an emergency session of the COBRA Committee, British Standards has confirmed. This move marks a significant shift in the UK's stance toward the ongoing crisis in the Middle East. The convening of COBRA, a body reserved for moments of national emergency or major international threats, underscores just how serious the situation has become. Despite having just returned from Canada, where he took part in the G7 and pushed for de-escalation in the region, Starmer will personally lead the meeting. Behind this decision lies mounting concern over the recent developments in the Israel-Iran conflict, particularly the very real possibility of US military intervention. UK intelligence reports suggest the conflict is teetering on the brink of a large-scale regional war. The prospect of direct Western involvement is becoming more tangible by the day, and the warning signs are already flashing red. The Foreign Office has confirmed that family members of British diplomats have been temporarily evacuated from the embassy in Tel Aviv and the consulate in Jerusalem, a precautionary measure reflecting increased risk to British nationals in the region. Downing Street's official stance remains cautious. The Prime Minister's spokesperson reiterated that the UK's objective is to de-escalate, not escalate. However, when pressed on whether Starmer still believed the United States would refrain from military involvement, he declined to comment, hinting at a potential shift in the government's expectations. Number 10 later issued a stark statement: "This is an extremely fast-moving situation, and we are working closely with our partners to stress the importance of returning to diplomacy." Yet, the diplomatic path may already be weakening. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, issued a direct threat to Washington today, warning that if the US becomes militarily involved, the consequences will be irreparable. He also accused the White House of covertly supporting Israel's recent offensive, fueling growing suspicion in Tehran. Meanwhile, reports from Washington suggest that President Donald Trump and his administration are actively weighing military options in support of Israel, including potential strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. Adding fuel to the fire, Trump published a cryptic but threatening message on social media, stating, "We know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. We're not going to take him out. Kill, not for now. But our patience is wearing thin." This back and forth of threats has sparked deep concern not only among diplomats but also among thousands of British citizens currently in Israel. With Israeli airspace shut down and all commercial flights grounded, many are unable to leave the country. So far, the British government has not announced a clear evacuation plan, instead issuing general guidance urging citizens to follow local authorities and stay near shelter. The current escalation began early Friday morning, when Israeli forces launched a large-scale offensive against Iranian facilities allegedly linked to nuclear weapons development. Iran retaliated the following night with waves of ballistic missiles, some of which managed to breach Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system. Shocking footage from Tel Aviv shows damaged buildings and civilians taking refuge in underground bunkers. With the potential for U.S. involvement hanging in the balance and the region edging closer to full-scale war, international attention is now firmly fixed on the UK and the COBRA meeting being led by Starmer. The decisions made today may not only determine the level of protection offered to British citizens abroad, but also define the role the UK will play in a rapidly intensifying global crisis. In other news, the Durham Miners Association has reiterated its decision to exclude Reform UK from its 139th annual gala, despite the party's decisive victory in the recent county council elections. Last month, the association made it clear that under no circumstances would Nigel Farage be welcome at the event. Now, the organization has released a lengthy statement in which it once again launches a scathing attack against the party. According to the DMA, Reform's electoral success was largely the result of protest votes and low voter turnout. The statement also delivered strong criticism of the party's elected representatives, accusing them of failing to uphold community values, trade unionism, and the principles of social justice. Elsewhere in the statement, the association echoed familiar Labour Party rhetoric, branding Farage a direct threat to the National Health Service. They claim that if he were ever to enter Downing Street, the NHS would be replaced by a private insurance model, marking what they call a historic blow to Britain's public healthcare system. Farage's pledges to support workers and revive British industry were dismissed as empty rhetoric, while Reform's so-called drive for efficiency was compared to previous Conservative policies that slashed funding for local services. The party was even described as a fan club for controversial figures such as Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, labeled a bully and a war criminal, respectively. Darren Grimes responded with irony to the DMA's refusal to allow Reform councillors to attend the gala, pointing out that the same organisation had just witnessed the near-total electoral collapse of a Labour Party in the region, losing 94% of its council seats. He described the result not simply as a defeat, but as a resounding rejection by the electorate. Grimes argued that when working-class people are given a real alternative, they turn out to vote. He added that Reform's councillors are more closely rooted in the mining and working-class heritage of the region than many current Labour MPs, whom he accused of having lost touch with their base, instead surrounding themselves with elite academics and adopting a metropolitan style far removed from the reality of the Northeast. In his view, the Miners' Gala has become a nostalgic performance for an audience convinced that Britain's greatest challenge is a lack of net zero officers. Meanwhile, the true people of Durham, the descendants of those who once worked the pits, have already made their voices heard at the ballot box. While the red flag may still fly at the annual gathering, Grimes concluded, it has been decisively removed from the political map by the will of the people. In its statement, the DMA also criticized the social media group run by Grimes, describing it as a toxic space rife with racial intolerance. The association further characterized Reform's councillors as divisive and bitter figures who have benefited from the collapse of the Conservative Party and Labour's failure to defend core principles such as decent employment, public services, and social equality. The DMA went on to argue that the current Labour government has veered sharply to the right, adopting Reform UK's rhetoric. In their analysis, this narrative shifts blame for social decline away from Tory cuts, tax breaks for the wealthy, and austerity measures, placing it instead on immigration. The association firmly stated that it has no intention of going down that road or compromising on its core values. In that context, the organisation made it clear that Reform UK representatives will not be welcome as official guests at its annual gala. What are your thoughts on today's report? Let us know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more updates on British current affairs. We'll see you in the next one.